Hello and welcome to How to Build Software Without Coding. I'm Mr. Hackathon and I show you how to build software without coding. And in this tutorial, I am going to show you my AI research workflow that combines a range of tools for me to interact with AI, to write reports, to research any topic. I usually use it to do with like market research and product development and stuff related to products, but you really can do this for any industry. So the first place we're going to start is with Gemini, and I'm going to show you kind of like how I start to structure my ideas with Gemini and develop them with Gemini. And then we're going to go to Perplexity to write reports and kind of synthesize some of the information and kind of build upon that. And then we're going to go to NotebookLM for kind of my feedback, to listen to it in a podcast format, to interact with it in a podcast format. And so, yeah, let's get started. So what I actually have here, if I can see, yeah, what I have here is some notes. It's basically just notes I've sent to a group I'm in that talk about artificial intelligence. And this is my thoughts on artificial intelligence, especially a lot of these reasoning models that come up, questions that I have, and really just random things in my head. And that is actually where I start the conversation. So if I can either chat with it in Gemini in like a text format, or we can actually talk to Gemini about this. So we are going to talk to Gemini about this, but I just want to amend some of my notes a little bit. I'm going to say, let's talk about my thoughts with reasoning models. And maybe I'm going to add something that says, ask me questions to help me develop the ideas. And instead of text, we could use this in a text format. I'm going to try to talk to Gemini. Now, I'm recording using OBS Studio, and I might have to use my mic, so I might have to do some creative post-editing with this, but I am talking to Gemini to do this. So I'm actually going to, it's aistudio.google.com, and what we're going to do is use Stream Realtime. I am going to put that in the system instructions, but then I am going to click Talk to Gemini. Hey Gemini, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It sounds like you have some interesting thoughts about reasoning models. Would you like to explore them further?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, great. You brought up a few good points about reasoning frameworks and how they're used. Do you want to start by discussing which frameworks are being used, like the root cause analysis versus SWOT analysis example you gave?
My question is not necessarily about what frameworks are being used. A lot of the reasoning models currently, it's not clear what frameworks are being used, if any. Probably there are some frameworks being used, but it's at the mercy of the AI assistant. I am not determining, or I'm not saying what frameworks that I would like it to be used.
Okay, so you're saying that it's unclear which reasoning frameworks, if any, are being used, and you'd like more control over specifying which frameworks the AI uses. Is that correct?
Yeah, but even like knowing what frameworks to use is important, right?
Yes, that's a valid point. Knowing which frameworks are appropriate for different situations is definitely important. It raises a question about how to choose the right framework for the task at hand. Do you have any thoughts on how to determine the best framework?
I don't have any ideas on that at all. No ideas. These are just initial thoughts that, hey, maybe I should be telling the AI what framework to use that maybe aligns with the way that I think or the way that I want it to think.
Okay, so it's more about the idea of having that control to direct the AI to use a specific framework, rather than knowing which framework to use in each case. Is that a fair assessment?
Definitely.
Okay, that's a good starting point. So you're not sure which frameworks are being used or how to choose them, but you do want more control over specifying them. What other aspects of reasoning models did you want to discuss?
What other ones are in my notes that I've shared with you?
Okay, I see. You also mentioned the visualization of reasoning in text format, the potential for manipulation, and weighting factors in reasoning. Which of those would you like to discuss next?
How we visualize reasoning. For example, you could visualize it as like a tree map of ideas, right? Or currently, it just shows the assistant's internal monologue. But that's not how I personally would communicate to another person my reasoning about an idea.
Okay, so you're suggesting that a tree map of ideas might be a better way to visualize reasoning than simply displaying the AI's internal monologue. It's an interesting thought. Do you think that a visual representation could be easier to understand or follow?
For some people, it would be, but even right now, it just shows the internal monologue, even if it was still text format, but in a text format where it's like one person as the assistant communicating to me, rather than it just showing the raw internal monologue that the assistant's thinking. And so it says something went wrong, but you can see like we had a whole. I could have been doing that conversation for a very long time with the assistant. And what we want to do from here is actually take the transcript, and what I'm going to do from this transcript is actually create a prompt for Perplexity to create a research report or a research article kind of from a lot of the ideas that are inside it. Currently with streaming real time, if I go back to the tab, with Gemini, I don't believe getting the transcript. It says output format audio. You could have a text output format, but getting the output, I don't think it is very easy or even possible to get that output format. So using this just to develop your ideas is great. I already developed my ideas around this, so I was just demonstrating like the power of it. What I then do is prepare my prompt for Perplexity. And so I have another chat that I'm going to go to just kind of use the template. I'm going to say, do the same for, and don't worry too much about my prompt. What I'm actually demonstrating is just the workflow. Hey, I'm using Gemini to develop my ideas. Then I use Gemini again to develop a prompt for Perplexity to give it a nice comprehensive research report. And I can share this. Just if you want this kind of output format, just let me know. I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna iterate on this a little bit. I'm not sure if it will exactly know what I mean. No, it came out pretty well actually. So reasoning models in AI, it says the objective critically examine the current state of reasoning models in AI assistants, exploring their limitation, potential improvements, and associated challenges. It has research questions here. It has different sections, authenticity of reasoning, and weights in reasoning. And so I'm just going to copy that. And this is my prompt for Perplexity. And what we're going to use on the free version, you have 5 free uses a day, is Perplexity Deep Research. And what I'm going to do is just paste that there. And what Perplexity is going to do, maybe if I open another tab just to show you an example output, it's going to create like a comprehensive research report. And here is one where I'm talking about prompt engineering, and I asked it to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the limitations of current prompt engineering for complex user goals. So we scroll all the way down, you can see it's developed this report for me. I can actually export this report, which we're going to do, but I can share it and do different things from it, and you can see There's some follow-up questions from there, from the report. We can even ask follow-up questions and start to build upon this. Again, if you're in stages or your research for your business or just personal research, I think is a very interesting workflow and very interesting tools to use. We're going to go back and just hit send. And we're going to let it think and develop the research around this. And so now Perplexity is finished and we can see, hopefully this output's good, but it starts to introduce reasoning models and say, hey, there's critical challenges are still there in transparency, reasoning verification, and prioritization or decision-making criteria. It talks about logic, deductive, reasoning, inductive. It talks about the visualization. So all of this is great. I typically go through this. I look at it. You can see here it does have links, and I could click this. I can follow up on certain issues. I don't actually want it to do that. I don't know how to cancel it. But what we are going to do is actually export this. And I'm going to try and refresh to try and cancel what's going on right now. So yeah, we can see it's talking about the next generation of reasoning models. And always double check this, double check the references. So you can see here logic and reasoning for SAI, quantum enhanced inference, embodied cognition models, all really interesting topics. And you would then go back and like research them and add to it, ask follow-up questions. But what I do next is really interesting too. So I exported this as a PDF. And what I then go and do is go to NotebookLM, and you can see all these. I'm talking here about prompt engineering. I'm talking about AI bias in police risk assessment. I'm talking about all different kind of organoid intelligence, human machine mergers, lots of really interesting things. And what you can actually see here is an interface that allows you to upload a PDF. Oh, wrong place. Upload a PDF right here. Wrong again. Let me just click upload and uploading it. So we uploaded our PDF. We can actually add other sources. So we can add YouTube video. If I actually click here, we can add YouTube videos, website links, things from Google Docs, Google Slides. We could just upload text. We could upload our raw notes. But I'm just going to leave it at that. And then what I like to do is go to deep dive conversation. And what's really interesting here, we can even customize this deep dive conversation. So we hit customize, we could say, hey, focus on this. If we go back, we could say focus on weighted reasoning and priority incorporation. We could say focus on next generation reasoning assistance. But we're not going to do any of that for now. And we're going to hit generate. And what it's going to generate is a nice podcast format, kind of debating and discussing and unbundling a lot of the things discussed in the PDF. So Notebook is finished. So let's try and listen to this.
It's amazing, isn't it, how AI assistants can hold a conversation these days. Answer some pretty tricky questions.
It really is.
They even seem to, understand what you really meant, even if you didn't say it perfectly.
It seems like just a few years ago this would have been, science fiction, but we're at a point now where AI can mimic human-level reasoning in so many ways.
So for this deep dive, we're going to really try to unpack the complexities of AI reasoning.
Okay.
We found this research report that we're going to be going through.
Great.
And it analyzes how these models think,
Okay.
how researchers are trying to visualize those thought processes. And then what are the hurdles that still exist?
Yeah, like we're peeking behind the curtain, trying to figure out how the wizard does it.
Exactly. The report dives into all these different logical frameworks. It mentions deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, abductive reasoning, even analogical reasoning.
Right.
Honestly, it sounds a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
Can you help us break some of these down?
Well, think of it like a toolbox, right? You have all these different tools, and AI reasoning is the same way. Different tools are better suited for different tasks.
Okay.
So deductive reasoning is like using a ruler, applying specific rules to reach conclusions. Like imagine a compliance system that uses legal statutes to determine if an action is permissible or not.
So it's very if this, then that kind of logic.
Yeah, exactly. And to see that in action with a lot of systems out there, like procedural reasoning systems, PRS,
Okay.
and these navigate complex regulatory environments using that very deductive approach. But sometimes AI needs to be more flexible, right?
Right. So that's where the inductive reasoning comes in.
Yeah. Inductive reasoning is more like using a brush to paint a picture. It's about generalizing from data. So think about like your music app that suggests new artists based on what you've already listened to. It's looking for patterns, but the conclusions aren't always guaranteed to be true.
Ah, so it's a bit more probabilistic.
Right.
Okay. What about abductive reasoning? That one, I don't know. It sounds mysterious.
Abductive reasoning is like detective work. It's dealing with incomplete information and piecing together clues. So like medical diagnostic tools, for example.
Okay.
They'll consider your symptoms and try to figure out what's the most likely illness, acknowledging that other possibilities might exist.
Interesting. And finally, there's analogical reasoning. So is that where AI is making comparisons?
Exactly. It's about transferring knowledge across domains. So imagine a robot that's learning to ride a bike in a simulation
Okay.
and then applies those skills to a real bike.
Wow.
That's transferring knowledge from the virtual to the physical.
That's neat. So the AI has all these different thinking styles it can use, but the report mentions that it doesn't always consciously choose which one to apply.
Right.
Right? It can just sort of emerge implicitly.
It really depends on how the model is designed and the data that it's been trained on.
Okay.
So take large language models, LLMs, for example.
Right.
The report specifically mentions Mistral 7B, a powerful LLM that shows implicit reasoning through a technique called Quiet Star.
Okay, Quiet Star. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. What's going on there?
It's like the AI is having a silent brainstorming session with itself.
Huh.
That's essentially what Quiet Star is.
Interesting.
It's training the AI to think through all these possibilities and create an...
And so I played that a lot longer than I wanted to, but obviously I was engaged with that. But Google NotebookLM have a really interesting feature, which is interactive mode. So I can actually interrupt these podcasters and ask a question. So they would talk about the different types of reasoning, and Quiet Star is a very specific type of reasoning. So I'm going to ask a question.
Can hold a conversation these days. Answer some pretty tricky questions.
It really is.
They even seem to like understand that you really meant, even if you didn't say it perfectly.
It seems like just a few years ago, this would have been, science fiction, but we're at a... Oh, hey, welcome. What's up?
So you was talking about all the different types of like reasoning.
Okay, so you want us to talk about everything.
Like all aspects of AI reasoning.
We can definitely try to cover it all.
Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
So you was talking about all the different types of reasoning. I want you to focus on like steering reasoning models. How do you steer reasoning models? Is it in the training data? Is it in the prompts? Like, how do you steer reasoning models to reason in the way you want them to reason?
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
So how to steer these models?
Like make them reason a certain way.
Well, it's a mix of things, really.
Tell us more.
It's in the training data. It's in the prompt you give it.
Prompts.
And sometimes it's even built into the model.
Like hard-coded.
Exactly. So let's unpack that a little.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So you can steer AI reasoning through training data.
By showing it examples.
Yes, of the kind of reasoning you want.
You can also use prompts, asking it to think step by step.
To get a more reasoned response.
And like I said, you can build it in.
So it sounds like there are different ways.
It really depends on the application.
Let's dive into the different ways of steering this. Okay, but we should mention the different types first.
Which, to be fair, is pretty important.
Okay, so where should we start?
Yes, I think we were about to get into types of reasoning.
Exactly. We were saying how AI seems to reason.
It really would have seemed impossible not that long ago.
Right. So to explore how AI reasons, we found this report.
It's a really fascinating look into the world of AI.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pause it because it's going to continue going through the audio overview. And you can see how seamless the transition is from me asking the question to it answering the question and then going back to the audio overview. You can see how we've kind of connected Gemini with Perplexity, with NotebookLM, and how these can start to work together in your research flow, especially as you are trying to think of ideas, as you're trying to develop your conviction around certain topics. This is a workflow that I started to develop. It's far from perfect, but you can start to see where the tools are going and how you can start to use these tools collectively. If there's any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section, and happy hacking.